Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Remote and Hybrid Learning with Teams for Education session. My name is Giuliano Menegaso. I am a program manager here at Microsoft. I'm part of the Microsoft Teams product group, and I work with schools and universities around the world, helping students, educators, staff members to adopt Teams to address their collaboration challenges. And the way we do this is typically through IT. So the focus of the session today will be a technical session, how you can enable remote and hybrid learning to your institution. Let's take a look at the agenda. I'll briefly cover Teams for Education. That's not the focus for the session, but I want to bring us up to speed here. Then we'll move to the three main steps when we work with institutions. You start with deployment. This is going to be really fast. The assumption for the session today is you have a tenant, you have accounts created, licenses assigned. So really fast on deployment. And I do want to spend more time on governance and automation, steps 3 and 4 here, and I'll wrap up with some suggested next steps. I'm going to be sharing documentation links, and you're going to get access to this deck later, so don't worry about getting access to the information. We try to consolidate everything we could to make it easier for you to find that. A good place to start is really to think about Teams for Education. Teams started as a hub. It has transformed into a platform. Of course, we can bring chat into Teams. We can place calls. We can share files. We can work on files. We can take notes. We can bring apps from Microsoft, from our partners. It is a global solution. But when we think about remote and hybrid learning, meetings is the main aspect. So I want to make sure you're aware of together mode available in this scenario, raise hand available in this scenario, 7x7. We recently announced dynamic view, spotlight. So all these things are coming, have come, or are coming really fast to make this scenario even richer, bring a richer experience for your teachers and your students. Teams is free for education, classes up to 300 participants, no cost actually. Cloud recording, same way, and discounted for education. We have the audio conferencing, the capability to dial in or dial out from a meeting, from a class, if you will. So anyone can join from their phones as well, although that's not exactly, it's not the richer experience we can offer, but it's available. And also the ability to broadcast sessions for up to 10,000 attendees using live events. The key takeaway here for Teams in Education is everyone can host a Teams meeting for free. Teachers, staff, students, anyone can do that. Of course, for students, we understand basically when this is appropriate and when it's not, perhaps more towards higher education than K to 12, according to your needs, but they have access, they can really host any meeting for free in Teams. If we think about the steps, the main steps, we have institutions that are starting fresh. They are really thinking about, hey, I'll create this environment in Microsoft. I'll create accounts, assign licenses from scratch. So we're going to share some guidance here, but we're not going to spend a lot of time. If you're already there, you can start on step 2, governance. How do you tell teams what it needs to do depending on who's using? So, hey, this is how I want teams to work for students. This is how I want teams to work for teachers, for staff, for researchers. You have a lot of options there. And the third step, it's really how you can automate, especially team creation, not just team creation, but mainly team creation. So your teachers, your faculty members, they don't have to do this. You can do this, and you can bring this for them. I have to confess, I work with institutions, and sometimes I see steps 2 and 3, they're flipped. So sometimes they plan team creation, automate everything, and then they will plan policies. So there's not necessarily right or wrong. We recommend to start with policy so you can tell teams what it needs to do. And when teachers, students have access to the classes that have been created automatically through step 3, teams will be working properly already. So that's why we chose this order. Technical documentation for teams, aka.ms/success with teams. You can also get there, aka.ms aka.ms/SWT. That's Teams all up. That's not Teams for Education specifically, although the education components are there. So I thought you guys would like to see this here. If you're starting with deployment, Teams uses four main elements to provide all of the functionality. It's going to use an identity in Azure AD, groups in Azure AD, Microsoft 365, Office 365, SharePoint Online, Exchange Online. So those are the elements you need to have in place in order to uh, offer everything Teams can offer to your end users. If you're coming from a Google environment, we made it easier to bring Teams to that environment so you can get started going through aka.ms/teams edu Google to see what are the options you have to deploy and what's the experience for your end users as well. So those are the main elements. The next step is really to enable licenses. So you're going to create the accounts, you're going to enable, assign licenses to users. I'm simplifying this here. We have detailed documentation, and you can get that through aka.ms/quick start EU. Finally, once you deploy Teams, you're going to deploy now the clients. And then you have a choice here. Of course, you can use MSI and do this on behalf of your users. You can use Intune and bring this to mobile phones as well. You can also get your users to download Teams if that's appropriate for your institution through aka.ms/get Teams. So again, really fast tips, tricks, documentation for the first step. Let's move to the second one because I want to have some time for a demo as well. So policies, governance, right? This is really governance in general is telling how I want teams to work and how I keep the environment under control. One of the big ways to do that is through policies, and that's why we're going to spend some time here today. So this is about telling teams how it should work for students, for teachers, and so on and so forth. We split this into a few steps as well. We realize this is part of best practices, no right or wrong, but if you follow the steps, it's going to be easier for you. First, forget about tools, forget about Teams Admin Center, PowerShell, Graph, forget about all of that and think about personas. What are the personas I need to support in my school, in my university? The simpler way to do that is, hey, we have students and we have teachers, so two personas. Often you have more, you have teachers, students, staff, guests. So you can define a lot of rules for how you want to manage this. We're going to start simple. So for the session today, for the purpose of the session today, we're going to have students and teachers. The other thing to keep in mind, and now I'm kind of connecting personas with the tool, with the options. Typically, we leverage the so-called global policy for the larger population, which is students. The idea is you customize the global policy to address the way you want teams to work for students, and then you create a policy for teachers and you do the same thing. You customize that to address needs from your teachers, and then you assign the policy just to teachers. That's important. This is going to make more sense in a few seconds, but basically think about leveraging the global policy for students and creating a policy for teachers in this example. So we define personas. Second step, you're going to set the policy. So now we're going to tools. We're going to use PowerShell. We're going to use the Teams Admin Center. And this is where you're going to define how meetings work or should work, how messaging should work, how calling, live events, apps. So there's a long list. This is just a small fraction of that list. We're talking about over 20 policies. So you don't have to change everything. By the way, you can pick the ones that make sense for you. I'm going to show you a little bit more in a few minutes. And finally, the last step, so you have the personas, you define your policies. Now you are going to assign these policies to your users. And there are a few different ways to do that through package, batch, group, package, batch. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. It really depends. Depends on a few things. And I'm going to expand this in the next slide, but typically you're going to look into the number of users, how many people need to have this policy, how many policies these people need to have. Sometimes just the meeting policy will address most of your needs. And you're going to see that in the group policy. Typically, we have 5, and those are the main ones. So think about the policy types. And then depending on the policy types you need to assign, that's going to tell, hey, this is the tool you're going to use, or this is the method you're going to assign those policies. Dynamics, if users are coming in, new teachers come in every semester or every month, perhaps you want to think about group policy. You're going to see that in a minute as well. And again, depending on all these answers, we're going to point you, okay, it's easier, faster to do this in the Teams Admin Center or through PowerShell. You're going to get access to the deck. I mentioned that. And basically, the first document here, this is a documentation with the details about how you can assign those policies. All the different methods that you see here, package, batch, group, package, batch, all the different links, documentation in a single place. So you'll be able to get linked to this. This is going to be your best friend. By the way, this is what we're going to use for the demo. And this is, excuse me, what I used to consolidate the next slide. Just before we go there, we also have a simplified page. So this is in docs.microsoft.com. We have another one in support.office.com. Basically, hey, if this is too much, you don't have the time, start here. This is also for IT, but we have very straightforward guidance. Hey, these are the things we're recommending to keep students safe while using Teams for distance learning. So again, link available for you. Now, let's drill down into the options you have to assign policies. So what I try to do here is to consolidate that documentation to make it easier for you to decide which one you want to use, which method. So you have 4 here: package, batch, group, and package batch. So let's do this here. Let's walk you through the package, and then everything else will follow through. But basically, to assign policy packages, you're going to do this through the admin center. It's not available through PowerShell. Therefore, there's no commandlet for that, of course. If you do that, you get access. You can assign 5 different types of policies, so specific ones. And I tried to consolidate this here. It was a long list, so I added links here. So again, you get easy access. But you're going to see here, basically, I think we're talking about meeting, messaging, live event, app setup, and I guess calling, if I'm not mistaken. There, in this case, for package policy packages, there's no option for PowerShell. Things to keep in mind: whenever you need to assign multiple policies to users of similar roles, like students, like teachers, or whoever your personas are, this is a good place. Keeping in mind that, hey, you cannot define every single policy. So this is a good place to start, but keep in mind that you may need to move to other methods depending on which policy types you need to assign. And the other thing I want to call out is, often we get asked, what is the right way to set up teams for students in primary education, higher education? So if you're not sure, you don't even need to use the group policy, but you can create, and then you can leverage those packages to see what we are recommending and customize to whatever makes sense to you. So keep that in mind as well. Regarding the last point here, updates, what we mean by static is really that you do this and you're done, right? Now, depending on how dynamic your users come in and out, this you may have to do this quite often. So let's go back to my example. Teachers join every month. New teachers join and leave every month. This is extreme example, but in that case, what would happen, and trust me, I've seen that. So that's why I'm sharing this example. But if that's your case, you just need to keep in mind, if you're using the policy package, whenever people join, you need to make sure they have the right policies. Otherwise, they're going to get the global policy. And if you're following what we just talked about, if global policies for students and you customize turning off a lot of the things you don't want students to do, that means new users, new teachers, new staff, they will have that limited experience. So that's why we created this static or this updates column here. So keep that in mind. Now, moving on, batch. So this is now basically a batch of users will get a specific policy. This is available both in the admin center and PowerShell. The difference here is basically, let's just jump. We have the commandlet here, but let's just jump here. If you're using PowerShell, you can assign more policies, 19. If you're going through the Teams admin center, you won't be able to see all the 19. You'll be able to see 13 of those. This is really for large sets of users, but keep in mind up to 5,000 users per batch. So typically what you're going to do is if you're using this one, you're going to divide your students or teachers, right? Let's say you have 20,000 teachers, you're going to have 4 batches of 5,000 and you're going to run this commanded for each one of the batches and for each one of the policies. That's important, right? This is per policy. And again, it's the same way, it's a static. Now, moving on, group policies. I'll show you this as part of the demo, but this is available through the admin center, PowerShell. You see the commandlet here. If you're using the admin center, again, you have fewer options. You still have 6 policy types. If you click here, you'll be able to see which ones. If you're using PowerShell, you have 13 policy types. The interesting piece about group is it relies on group membership. So think about you have a group on Azure with all teachers, another one with all students. And by the way, this is pretty much what STS can do. You're going to see this in a few minutes. So if you have that kind of environment, group policy might be a great option for you because it has this dynamic element. So that means, especially if you're using SDS, hey, we're adding new students or teachers on a weekly basis, monthly basis. I'm working with institutions, they do this every day. And I'm not saying this is true for everyone, but I'm just saying if you have that kind of dynamic environment, you want to consider, you want to take a second look here at the group policy, because in this case, especially if you're running SES, you're adding teachers, students, we're updating everything, we're updating those groups in Azure AD, and guess what? They will get the policies assigned to that group. So you don't need to worry about policy assignment as long as you keep that group up to date, right? And SES is a great way to do that. If you want to use this, keep in mind you need to understand precedence rules. It's not complicated. It's basically saying, hey, if a user is part of more than one group, which one has the priority? That's pretty much what it is. But with that in mind, when you're using this, you're going to have to rank your your policies, your groups, or your groups, your policies for your groups. Okay, last one. It's a combination of the first two. So package batch. Right now, it's not available in the admin center. It's available in PowerShell. It's a new one. There's no link for this one yet. You have 19 policy types, the same one you have here, but it's really a combination. So you have multiple policies for a large group of users, and it's also static. We are working on package group. So we're combining the first and the third one now, and this is coming soon. So keep an eye on that one. All right, so let's talk about SES here, and let me just get this out of our way. And or automation, but I'll focus on SES, and I do want to spend a lot of time, or most of the time, on demo. You have access to a few tools to get this done, to take care of governance, to take care of automation. A school data sync is going to help us to automate team creation. That's the short story. That's what you're going to see in the next few slides. If you're familiar with CLI tools, PowerShell is the tool for you, right? So we have command lists that allow you to create teams as well, add members, remove members, get information. You can, of course, create scripts. So there's a lot you can do with PowerShell. And we have a third option here, which is a little bit more, let's say, technical, but it gives you additional granular control. And that is, hey, you can create your teams, you can add your teachers as owners, you can add students as members, you can add channels to those teams, and you can add applications, install applications, and you can post messages. So there's a lot more you can do if you're using the Graph API. By the way, School Data Sync leverages some of the APIs in graph from the graph. And it's not in the screen here, but yeah, the Teams Admin Center, that's the GUI, right? So if you're thinking about using a more graphical way, you can also do that from the Teams Admin Center. And let's jump into STS here. So this is really the tool that's going to automate class team creation. The baseline here is it's going to take information from your SIS, your students, your teachers, your classes, basically, and is going to translate that into the Microsoft environment. So it's going to create groups in Azure AD. It's going to create teams in Teams. It's going to attach a OneNote class notebook to that team. And if you want to use Intune, it can automate that for you as well. So this is pretty much what it does. I'm going to walk you through the steps. And again, I'm rushing a bit because I want to spend more time showing you this. So this is where you start, sts.microsoft.com. You're going to be able to log in. You're going to get access to documentation. You can also get support from Microsoft if you need help to deploy through SDS, aka.ms/SDS signup. And we're going to reach out to you and we're going to help you to understand how to do this. If when we're thinking about SDS, and you're going to see this in a minute, we have four main steps. First, you're going to create a sync profile and you're going to define if that profile is going to leverage an API. And this really depends on the type of SIS you have in place. Or if you don't want to depend on an SIS, or if you have a homegrown SIS, you can use CSV files to keep everything in sync. Then you're going to define the sync options. Hey, am I doing this for new users, existing users, uploading the files, and some of the options. The link down there is really to show you an easy access to templates. By the way, we recently announced what we call CSV v2 for SDS. So we have a different schema that is, let's say, more neutral between K to 12 and higher ed. I'm not going to use that one for the demo here. I'm using CSV view 1 because a lot of the services we have right now are still coming to V2, so that it was a choice, but you should know the differences between the two there. And then the third and fourth step, they're similar, but then for one for students, another one for teachers, you're going to map properties, and we can really, I'm going to make it really fast for the demo purpose here. You can also customize saying, hey, I want to basically, if I'm using SDS, teachers will have to activate their classes. So they have additional control before students jump in. They will be able to customize. And even if they don't want to customize, students will not be able to join until they click on activate. And you can also synchronize grades using Grade Sync. For the demo, we're going to use sds.microsoft.com, and we're going to use the templates available at the second link here. And I'm going to jump to the demo now. That's what I want you to see. So let's start with policies. Let me open the right screen here. There you go. So remember, first step. So this is, by the way, this is the Teams Admin Center, admin.teams.microsoft.com. And first step won't happen here. First step, you're going to take some time with your business partner, education, instructional design, whatever it's called in your institution, and you're going to define what are the personas and how you want teams to behave for those personas. So in our case, remember, we're going to use global for students, and we're going to use I'm going to create one for teachers. So let's start with the global one. And remember, distance learning, I'm going to focus for the demo here on the meeting policies. So I'm going to meeting policies. I have a few policies here already. I'm going to click on the global, and I am going to make sure the global does what I want students to see in Teams. So for instance, we can come here and say, hey, I don't want students to schedule meetings. And I'm not suggesting this because students, it's a large population, K to higher ed. So make sure you're doing this according to your student profile. But let's say in this example, it doesn't make sense. I don't want students to record. I want students to turn video on. Okay, we're good. I'm going to save. That's it. So if you do that, and you don't assign the policy to students, you know they're going to have the global one. Now, Let's move to the second persona, teachers. So I'm going to pause here for a second. I want to show you how I did, just so you know this is an option for you. I basically, we're going to use the education teacher policy here, but I want you to see how I got here. So I'm mixing up some things here now. So that's the pause. I went to policy packages. This is available. So Microsoft is creating this and we're suggesting, hey, education, higher education student, let's take a look. You're going to see 5 policies. The 5 I mentioned on the slide, they show up here. So if you're using policy package, messaging, meeting, app setup, calling, live events, let's take a look at the messaging policy for higher education student. This one, actually, you know what? I don't want you to see this one because I want you to see something else. Let's see primary school student. Meeting policy. Bear with me. There you go. I wanted you to see this. So this is a recommendation. This is what I meant by starting point. Hey, primary students, we are recommending to turn this off, enable this, disable that. Again, you don't have to use this, but you can use this as a starting point and then just turn on or off whatever makes sense for your needs. What I wanted you to see is, you see, I cannot customize this. And this is, we get a lot of times this question. The reason you can customize is because the policy hasn't been created yet until it's assigned to someone. So once you assign, now I want to go back to the previous screen here with higher education students. There you go. So this one is enabled for me because I previously assigned and then it was created and then I can come here and customize. So I wanted you to think about the flow. Hey, does it make sense for me to take a look at the policy packages? So if so, this is how they would work. So I'm resuming now from that pause. Let's go back to meeting policies. Remember, we define personas, students getting the global policy, teachers are getting the education teacher policy. I could have created this from scratch. This one I assigned from a package, the way I just showed you. And here's where what you're going to see. Basically, hey, we're allowing teachers to schedule meetings from all the different options here. They can record, transcription is available, video is available. Basically, you can customize again to your needs. There are 2 things I want to call out here that will really help your teachers if you do this for them. So first, let anonymous people start a meeting. So if teachers want to have control, first of all, we recommend students to join authenticated. You're going to have more control. It's going to be safer for students. So that's one thing. Now, we understand that's not always possible. So if you need to allow students to join your classes anonymously for any reason, you want to turn this off because that means the teacher will have the power to say, okay, um, students won't be able to join until they will stay, anonymous students will stay on the lobby until I admit them. And this is basically if sorry, let me go back. This is actually if students will be able to start the meeting, and this one is the one I was referring to. So everyone in your organization, meaning whenever students are joining anonymously, they will wait in the lobby until the teacher accepts them. The other one I want you to see is this one here, roles that have presenter rights in meetings. So the standard is this, and what happens if you just leave it as is, anyone can be a presenter, everyone, right? So what you want to consider is, if you think about organizers, so when you do this, you're telling teams, hey, meeting organizers, teachers, most of the time, they will be presenters, students will be attendees, and therefore teachers will have, excuse me, additional controls. So keep that in mind because this is what a lot of teachers are doing manually every time they create a meeting, a class, because the policy is not doing that for them. So you have that power now. You can come here and let's see, I have everything I want. I'm going to save. So when you do that, you're going to wait a few hours and the policy will be applied to everyone. Now, I created a meeting here and I wanted you to see what those 2 things represent. So the first one I mentioned is who can bypass the lobby. So you're telling teams On behalf of your teachers, if you assign that policy, people in my organization. Right now, you see teachers have another option here, only me. So that means that even when authenticated, students will have to wait in the lobby. This option currently is available for teachers in the meeting options screen. We're bringing that, we're testing this now in PowerShell. So soon IT will be able to do this as well. But anyway, this is the first one. The second one is who can present. So basically that option is the same as only me. So instead of having uh, putting your teachers to do this every time they schedule a meeting, if you do this in the meeting policy, like this and like this, basically you're making everything easier for them. All right, so let me see what else. We define personas, we set the personas. Let's assign those policies now. So let's go back to meeting policies here. You see, uh, group policy assignment is what I'm going to use. I had to make a choice, and I chose this one for the demo. Group policy assignment is available for meetings, messaging, live events. Let's just take a look here. Live events, we have it here. Messaging is here. But it's not available for all the policies, so keep that in mind. But for the distance learning scenario meeting policy, it is. So let's take a look. Basically, I'm going to click here and I'm going to click add a group. I'm going to search for a group. So this is an Azure AD group, all teachers. There you go. That's the one I was looking for. In this case, I'm just saying I'm going to keep rank 1 because this is the only one I have for teachers. The idea for ranking is if a user is part of multiple groups and I assign policies to those groups, the rank will tell which one will have priority, will actually not priority, which one will be assigned first, number 1, and so on. And the one I'm going to assign here is education teacher, the one we just customized. There you go. So this is the governance piece, right? For the demo, we customize policies. We told teams what to do for students. We told teams what to do for teachers. Now, we're going to switch gears now and move to the third side of the story, and that is automation. And I'm going to focus specifically on SDS. So I'm going to connect the two things in a few minutes. So bear with me for a while. So this is the SDS admin center. So sds.microsoft.com. I logged in. I got here. This is the profile I used to create some of the classes I'm going to show you in a few minutes, but we're going to create a profile together here. So let's add a profile here on the sidebar. And I might need to log in again. Let's see, there you go. So the profile, I'm gonna call this Ignite. And this is where you're gonna make those choices I mentioned before. Hey, I'm gonna use CSV files or API. I'm gonna use CSV for the demo. Remember I mentioned CSV, I said V1, it's just a SDS format. V2, it's here. I'm not gonna select this one. You see, depending on what I try to do, I'm gonna get some notification here. That's not what I want. I just wanted you to see the option. So CSV, CSV v1, name. Now let's start this profile. I'm going to use this for existing users. I'm not going to change that. I'm going to upload files. So remember the templates I mentioned, that link, that's where you're going to get your files. And I want you to actually see those files. Give me a second here. There you go. So you're going to get the templates and you're going to see something like this. If you're not using the parent, the guardian option, you're going to see 6 files for CSV v1. Again, slightly different for v2, but the rationale is the same, and that's the most important piece here. So school, so if you have multiple schools in your district or multiple departments in your university, section is actually the class, the course, list of students, list of teachers, student enrollment. So basically we're connecting, this file is connecting students in sections, and then teacher roster is connecting teachers in sections. That's what we're doing here. So this is what it looks like. I want you to see. Let's start the most important files. So basically we have the section file. In this example, super simple. We have IDs for these classes in the SIS. I created actually already math and history. And what else? Let me show you. This is the teacher file. let's save these things. All right, we're good here. We're good here. So we're also saying, hey, this is a teacher. Kara is the teacher with SIS ID 14001, Megan 14002. So nothing special about it, just needs to be in this format. This is what SDS is going to use to create those groups. And for the students, it's very similar. So we have students here, list of students, their SIS ID. And finally, I want you to see not the last one, but the last one I'm going to show you at least, the student enrollment file, which is basically connecting classes with students. So basically, we're taking Adele, Alf, Douglas, and Ella here with this section. So Adele and Alf will go to the first class. Let's go back. No, not this one, my bad. This one here. So we're saying, okay, two students are going to the math class here, 11003, 11003. Two students are going to the history class. That's how we're using those files. So let me close everything here. Now that you got it, an idea. And by the way, teacher and school, or teacher roster and school, very similar. All right, so what we're gonna do, I did that already, but we're gonna let this create. I'm not enabling the Guardian Sync. If I enable this, I need to provide additional files here, connecting now parents and guardians with students. So I'm not gonna do that. So I have 6 files. We're gonna add files. Let's find this. Oh, great. I thought everything would be showing up here. No problem. So let's see. This is gonna be Teams, deployment, demo, ignite, 2. There you go. So 1 I did already. Great. So I'm going to open and I'm going to upload these files. So SDS is going to make, it's going to run some checks here. If I have any errors, basically it's going to tell me what I need to fix. Okay, upload it. So we're going to move forward. We can customize some school properties here and section properties, so I can add more fields. This is really related to the mapping. I'm going to keep as simple as possible. I can allow team creation. So from the groups, I'm creating a team as well. I'm keeping this one. I can use different options. I'm going to speed up here just for the sake of time, and I'm going to tell SDS when it should stop syncing the profile. So I'm going to get the last day of the year. Now we're moving to the teacher options. Again, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to keep my domain here. For teachers, I'm not going to change teacher properties. I could. I'm keeping everything as is. Now we're moving to step 3, students. I'm going to do the same thing here. User. Oh, no, I don't want to change that. This one here. There you go. And same thing, student properties. I'm keeping everything as is. And I'm going to create a profile. So that's it. SDS is going to do the work now. So we'll let SDS, basically it's going to do its magic. And in the meantime, I want you to see something I created before. So I created the sync profile called Teams for Education, very similar process. And this is what I did. I created those 2 classes I mentioned, math and history. So let's see the process here. Azure AD Admin Center. So basically, let's go back here. Once you're here, I'm gonna go to groups. I'm going to search for history. This is one of the classes. There you go. The class is here. I see it was created. I can see the object ID, other parameters. I see it has 3 users, 1 owner. Let's see. So the owner is Megan, as the CSV had, and members, we have Megan and the 2 students, Douglas and Ella. So far so good. Now the information you see here should be in sync with what you see in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. That's admin.microsoft.com. Basically groups, active groups. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to search for history. And there you go. So very similar, right? So I can see some information. I want you to focus on the owner. So the same owner, Megan, members, we have the 3 here. And I can see teams in the admin center. I'm not going to click there because I'm going to show you this in a different way. But I want you to pay attention on this. So once if you select the team creation option, sometimes you may see this as Teamify. this is what happens. This means we created a group in Office 365 Azure AD, and this group was not turned, but we added a team to that group. And this is what this icon is telling me. Now, let's go back to the Teams Admin Center, different location now. Teams, manage teams, and now we're going to do the same thing, history. So basically, we're seeing the same class showing up in different places, and depending on where you go, you're going to get different information. But there you go. I can see Megan, Douglas, history, same thing. Great. Now, how does this look like for teachers? Let's see. So I have here. This is Megan. I'm logged in as Megan. There you go, Megan Bowen. And this was the class we just created together. So history, check this out. The teacher is notified, hey, we created this for you. You need to activate this. Oh, okay, good. But before I do that, this is where I can come in. I can create channels. I can add apps. You know what? I want to have, let's say, I want to have insights right from the beginning. This is, I've been using this for a while. I know it's super helpful. I want to add, there you go. I don't want to post it in a channel, and I'm going to save and move forward. Actually, I'm going to speed this up, but teachers come here, customize, and now I'm ready. Let's say I customize everything. I'm gonna activate. And now, okay, warning, great, that's what I want, activate. Now we're bringing students in, and basically, there you go, it's active. And now students will be able to see this class right here. So that's the process, again, speeding it up a bit. But one thing I want to call out, let me go back. I want you to see one thing that is important, connecting to the governance piece. So remember, we started in SDS, we moved to Azure AD in sync with the M365 Admin Center, and then it shows up in the Teams Admin Center, and finally it will show up in the Teams client for teachers and students. One thing I want you to see if you're using SDS, let's go back to AD, groups. You see, there's a security group here, all teachers. This was created by SDS, and check it out. Members, Kara, and Megan. So that's a dynamic part that I mentioned before. If you're using SDS and you keep this up to date, so that's a very important caveat there. The group policy might make more sense for you. Let's take a look well, I'm about to finish this, but let's take a look. Let's take a look and see if the profile we just created, it looks like it's still synchronizing, validating files. So I guess it's still happening, but we can just check. I'm not sure if we're going to see something, but let's see. Let's see. No, it hasn't created yet. I added a chemistry and a physics class, so it's happening right now. So this is SDS doing that process, creating the group in Azure, creating, teamifying that group, adding teachers as owners, adding students as members, getting the team ready to be activated by teachers. It takes a while, so probably it's going to show up here in a few minutes. But that's fine. That was not part of the demo, actually. So let's wrap up. Thinking about next steps, we only have some additional resources for you we want to point you to. So first of all, we covered a lot in not a lot of time. We recognize that we tried to consolidate everything related to remote learning in this first documentation, aka.ms/teams.edu remote. So this is very specific for education, very specific for remote learning. And keep in mind, all the innovation, the fast pace, which is hard to keep up, we also recognize that we're updating this year. So this is very, very specific to remote learning. On top of this, we have not necessarily related to remote learning, we have education webinars. So we have sessions here, aka.ms/teams.edu webinars, sometimes for IT, sometimes for educators. So keep an eye here. Join the sessions, engage, ask your questions, share this with your faculty members so they can get this option as well. And finally, we have technical training. So this one is not education specific. This one is Teams all up. So we have Teams Academy. You see the address here. Hey, I want to learn more about security and compliance in Teams. I want to learn more about the upgrade from Skype to Teams. I want to learn more about live events, right? So not necessarily related to education as we focus today, but we still thought this would be a good recommendation for you. All right. So with that, I like to thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful for you and you can use this right away back in your school, in your university. Thank you very much.